No one knows precisely the number of hungry people in the world, but the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates it to be in the hundreds of millions. The statistics are staggering. 11% of the world's population, or 820 million people, are undernourished. That means they have a caloric intake below the minimum energy requirements. 1 in 4 people globally, 1.9 billion, are moderately to severely food insecure, which means they don't know where their next meal is coming from or even if there will be a next meal. 7 million children in the world under the age of 5 die each year from malnutrition. The hungry are most numerous in Asia, but expanding fastest in Africa and across the planet. The report forecasts that COVID-19 pandemic could tip over 130 million more people into chronic hunger by the end of 2020. Hunger was no stranger in biblical times. In the days of Isaiah, as we heard him promise in our first reading today, the Israelites, returning from their decades-long exile in Babylon, would experience God's life-giving care. God will bless them with fertile soil and abundance. And in spite of their pitiful resources, they will eat well without paying a cent, and no one will die of hunger or thirst. Again and again in the scriptures, God provides for God's people, as he fed the Israelites in the desert with manna for 40 years, or as the prophet Elisha fed 300 men by the miraculous multiplication of a few loaves of bread. In today's gospel, Jesus enacts God's promise to fill the hungry with good food as he feeds a crowd of thousands. His disciples presume that there is enough food, but that it's somebody else's responsibility to provide it. They want everyone to go off and buy their own food. This presumes, first of all, that everyone has money to buy food, and secondly, that the surrounding villages will have enough resources for the multitudes. This was probably not the case at all. In Jesus' time, most people were day laborers, hired in the morning and paid in the evening of each 12-hour workday. For most Palestinians at that time, life was lived one day at a time. Food was purchased and prepared only one day at a time, both because there was no adequate way to store and preserve food, but also because most workers could not afford to buy provisions for their family for more than one day at a time. Scripture scholar Sister Barbara Reed points out that Jesus' action of feeding the multitude is not only an act of compassion, but also a politically subversive action. She writes, "In Jesus' day, as now, food is about power. The rich who had control of the land and the means of food production and distribution, who comprised about 2% or 3% of the population, were the ones who ate well and plentifully. The rest struggled daily to feed themselves and their children. Taxes, pestilence, and drought often ate up their reserves and left them on the brink of starvation." She also points out that at the end of this miracle story, Matthew's count of the 5,000 did not include women and children. And this serves as a reminder that then, as of now, children and their mothers are the ones who are hardest hit by hunger. Remember the staggering statistics we heard just a moment ago. 7 million children in the world under the age of 5 die each year from malnutrition. In the gospel, when the disciples wish to send the crowds away, Jesus says, "There's no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves." Jesus gives us the same command as we wring our hands, lamenting the fate of so many hundreds of millions of starving people in the world today. Jesus directs our attention to the fact that in today's world, there is easily enough food for every single person. But not all have the land to grow their own food or the sufficient income to purchase it. And while so many have so little, so few have so much. Just a few more mind-numbing statistics. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, but consumes half the food produced in the world today. No wonder obesity is such a national crisis. Now, I don't mean to gross you out, but again, the statistics tell us that Americans eat 75 acres of pizza, 53 million hot dogs, 167 million eggs, 3 million gallons of ice cream, and 3,000 pounds of candy a day. A day. And still there are people in this country who are starving. The late Pope, St. John the 23rd, addressed this problem in his 1961 encyclical Mater et Magistra, Mother and Teacher, writing, "The problem in feeding the world's hungry population lies with our political lack of will, our economic system biased in favor of the affluent, our militarism, our tendency to blame the victims of social tragedies such as famine. We all share responsibility for the fact that populations are undernourished. Therefore, it is necessary to rouse a sense of responsibility in individuals, especially among those blessed with this world's goods." Those words were penned almost 60 years ago, but they sound as if they were written for our world today. In fact, our global circumstances are even worse. World hunger is growing in crisis proportions. The authors of the Christian scriptures must have sensed the significance of Jesus' action in feeding the hungry masses. This is the only miracle story that is contained in all 4 of the Gospels. The reference of this miracle to the Eucharist is also highlighted in all the Gospels, but especially in John's Gospel, where it, rather than at the Last Supper, becomes the setting for Jesus' Eucharistic exhortation. Matthew's Gospel, which we just heard, also focuses on this Eucharistic action with the verbs that explain Jesus' actions. He takes the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he blesses them, he breaks the bread, and he gives it to his disciples to give to the crowd. He takes, blesses, breaks, and gives. If this was the only miracle story we had of Jesus' ministry, it would be enough, because it makes clear that the miracles of Jesus, all the miracles of Jesus, are models for how we are to live as his disciples. Jesus cured 1 blind man, 1 deaf mute, 1 paralyzed man, 1 leper. He did not cure all the blind, all the lame, all the deaf, all the leprous in Israel. What he did as an example of what we, his followers, are to do in his name. Now you might profess, but he fed over 5,000 people. Yes, he did, but he did it only once. He did not take their hunger away permanently. He relies upon us for doing that. Jesus puts all of our sisters and brothers, all of their needs, all of their suffering, all of their wants in our hands as our responsibility. We might wish to turn away or to send them away, but we can't. On a hillside in Galilee, almost 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, "There is no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves." Today, to each one of us, Jesus says, there is no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves.